Hi guys, good morning. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. And can you guys see the slides as well?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, guys. So I will start off with lecture 9 because like we couldn't finish this lecture note last week. Like we did up to slide 26. There are 5 or 6 more slides to be discussed. So I'll start from there. And then once we finish this note, one after we finish this lecture note, we can move on to today's lecture note, which is lecture 10. Okay, so yeah, so first of all, I will start off from where we stopped last week. Okay, so last week we were basically discussing about the sources of funds, right? So we discussed about several different sources of funds. Okay, so sources of funds means sources through which you can earn money in a business, in a company, the sources through which you can get money. Okay, so those are called sources of funds. Okay, so we discussed a lot about several different types of sources. Okay, and we also learned that these sources can be categorized into two main groups as internal sources and external sources. Okay, and you can categorize external sources again into two main groups as long term and short term. Okay, so internal and external sources, and we can divide external sources again into two groups as long-term external sources and short-term external sources. Okay, so yeah, so when it comes to external sources of funds long term. Okay, so these are the long-term external sources. Okay, so there are four types of long-term external sources: share capital, loan capital, venture capitalists, grants from governments and other organizations. Okay, so out of these four topics, we discussed about share capital and loan capital. So we finished discussing the share capital and loan capital. So we need to start from here. We need to start from venture capitalists. So let me go to that slide. Yeah, this we discussed last week. Advantages of loan capital we discussed. Yeah, so we need to start from here. Venture capitalists. Yeah. Okay, so yes, we can move, start from here. Venture capitalists. Okay, so venture capitalists is another external source of fund, a long-term source. Okay, so a long-term external source. Okay, so now who are venture capitalists? What is the meaning of venture capitalist? Okay, so venture capitalists are special bankers. Okay, so venture capitalists are specialist bankers. Okay, so they are not normal bankers, they are specialist bankers who are willing to help new businesses. Okay, so venture capitalists are basically specialist bankers um, who are willing, like who are interested in helping new businesses. Okay, because when you start a new business, when you start a new company, like in the initial stage, you do not have a lot of business contacts and you do not have a lot of money, right? So when you firstly start off a company, you have a tight budget, and you do not know many people from the industry as well, because you are new. So you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of business contacts. Okay, so venture capitalists are there to help you with that. Okay, so venture capitalists are basically specialist bankers. They are special bankers who are interested in helping new businesses that are newly starting off. Okay, so how do they help new businesses? What do they do to help new businesses? Okay, so they invest in the share capital. Okay, so venture capitalists invest in the share capital. Okay, so we discussed about share capital last week. Okay, so share capital means, let me show you the definition. So share capital means the amount of money that the investors are putting into the business when you start off the business. Let me show you guys the definition. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this is the definition for share capital. Okay, so share capital represents the monies that are put into a company by investors who are then classified as shareholders. Okay, so share capital is basically the money which is put into the company by shareholders. Okay, because when you are starting a business or when you are starting a company, um, at the initial stage, the investors will put in their money into the company. Okay, so those initial monies that are put into the company by investors are called share capital. Okay, so whatever the money which is put into the company by investors in the initial stage, when you are starting off a business or a company, is called share capital. Okay, so venture capitalists also invest in this share capital. Okay, so they also put their money into the share capital. Okay, so that is how venture capitalists help out new businesses. They put their money into the share capital and they also provide loan capital. Okay, so loan capital, we discussed about loan capital as well. So loan capital means the money that we get from banks or lenders. Okay, so let me show. Okay, yeah. Loan capital means the funding provided by outside banks and lenders is generally referred to as debt or loan capital. Okay, so lenders means the people who are giving you money. Okay, because when we are taking a loan, when we are taking a loan, we can take loans from banks and we can take loans from people as well, right? So if you are taking it from a person or a group of people, those people are called lenders. Lenders means the people who lend you money, the people who give you money. Yes, so yeah. So loan capital means whatever the money that you get from banks, whatever the money that you get from banks or lenders. Okay, so venture capitalist. So we were just discussing about venture capitalists, right? So venture capitalists invest in the share capital and they provide for loan capital as well. That is how they help out new businesses. Okay, yeah, so when the second point, venture capitalists invest in the share capital and provide loan capital for the business. Okay, so this is the point that we just discussed. Okay, so this is how venture capitalists help out new businesses. They invest in the share capital and they provide loan capital as well. Okay, so the main point here is venture capitalists only target companies with great expansion or growth potential. Okay, so why is that? Why do they specifically target companies with great expansion or growth potential? Because as we just discussed, I just told you that they invest their money in share capital and they provide loan capital as well, right? So they provide money in two different ways. They invest money in share capital and then they provide money for the loan capital as well. Okay, so they are providing money to the business in two different ways. Okay, so uh, since they are providing money in two different ways, they should be extremely careful, right? Because they should not spend money on companies which do not have any future, right? So if they spend their money, if they invest their money in a company which doesn't have any future, then it is a waste of money for them. It is a waste of money for the venture capitalists, right? So they have to be extremely cautious about the company on which they are spending money. Okay, so that is why they specifically target companies with a clear vision, with great expansion or growth potential. Okay, so they always choose companies which have a very good potential for growth and with great expansion. Okay, so they basically perform companies which they think uh, will perform well. Okay, so like they always choose well performing companies that have a clear future and a good growth potential. Okay, so that is the reason for them to choose this kind of companies specifically, because they are investing their money in two different ways, in share capital and loan capital. So they should be very careful when choosing the um, company to invest. Okay, so they are choosing companies which have a good future, which have a great expansion and growth potential. Okay, so yeah, so this is how venture capitalists work. Okay, so now we can see what are the advantages of um, venture capitalists. Okay, so I just mentioned that when you start off a business, when you start off a company, you have a tight budget. You do not have because you haven't generated any income yet, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි business එකක් පටන් ගත්ත ගමන්ම පටන් ගත්ත අලුතම අපි මොකුත් income එකක් earn කරලා නැහැනේ. right? So අපි පටන් ගන්නකොට අර පටන් ගන්න කම්පැනි එක පටන් ගන්න යොදන මුදල විතරයි අපි අතේ තියෙන්නේ. We have only that budget, right? We haven't made any income yet. So we have a tight budget when we firstly start off a business or when we firstly start off a company. Okay, so there is a tight budget, and the other thing is, like I mentioned before, we do not have many business contacts also, right? Because we are new to the industry, we are a new company. So we don't have many business contacts since we are new. Okay, so venture capitalists are there to help you with that. Okay, so this is the major advantage of venture capitalists. Okay, so they provide you financial support by investing their money into your company. And they also provide, in addition to financial support, they also provide business help and contacts. Okay, so they provide you some business contacts. Okay, some contacts of some people to whom you can reach out for help. Okay, so providing business help and contact is another main advantage of venture capitalists, in addition to providing money. Okay, and yeah, so through these contacts, um, through these contacts provided by the venture capitalists, you can identify new technologies or new partners. Okay, so you can reach out to them through the contacts provided by venture capitalists and discuss about new technologies or partners. Okay, so this is one main advantage of venture capitalists. Okay, and the other thing is venture capitalists also sit as non-executive directors to protect their investments. Okay, so yeah, so in the previous slide, we discussed that they invest in the share capital and they provide loan capital as well. Okay, so they are providing money in two different ways. So they are investing in the company in two different ways, right? So they will sit as non-executive directors to protect these to protect these investments. Okay, so they are investing in the share capital, they are providing loan capital, and they are protecting these investments by sitting as non-executive directors of the company. Okay, so they perform as non-executive directors to protect these investments. Okay, so what does it mean by they sit as non-executive directors? Okay, so the meaning of this phrase, they sit as non-executive directors kiyanne, venture capitalists provide some sort of guidance or direction to the company. Because in the previous slide we discussed, look at the first point, we discussed that venture capitalists are special bankers who are willing, who are interested to support new businesses, right? So when you are starting a new business or when you are starting a new company, um, uh, like you are new to the industry, right? You are new and you are totally inexperienced. You are totally unexperienced, right? You are not experienced. You are a new company or it's a new business. So you don't have any experience in the industry, right? So without having experiences, it might be difficult for you to sometimes make decisions and sometimes to make plans. Okay, so there can be difficulties in those areas since you are new to the industry. Okay, so venture capitalists are there to help you with that as well. Okay, so they sit as non-executive directors and provide guidance, support, and direction to the company. Okay, so that will be easier. So with their guidance, with your venture capitalists' guidance and direction, it will be easier for you to make plans and um, yeah, if it will be easier for you to make plans and decisions, right? So that is the meaning of that is the meaning of this. They sit as non-executive directors, means they provide direction and guidance to your company so that it will be easier for you to make decisions and plans to take the company ahead. Okay, and yeah, so these are some advantages of venture capitalists. Okay, so yeah, so we just discussed about these first three external sources: share capital, loan capital, and venture capitalists. Okay, so the next external source, next long-term external source that we are going to discuss is grants from governments and other philanthropic organizations. Okay, so this is the next external source that we are going to talk about. Okay, so let me go into the slide. Yeah, external sources of funds, long term. Okay, so now we are talking about long term external sources. Okay, so this is the next long term external source we are going to talk about: grants from governments and other philanthropic organizations. Okay, so what do you guys know about the word grant? Like, what are grants? Can someone tell me?
funding from governments or any other organization in money freely.
Yes, Janakar, that's right. That's a very good answer. Yes, a grant means money that you get from the government or from a philanthropic organization. Okay, so philanthropic organizations කියන්නේ organizations that do philanthropic work, like charity kind of work. Okay, so yeah, so grants means a grant means the kind of money that you receive from um the government or from philanthropic organizations. Okay, so this money you do not have to pay it back. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ආපහු ඒගොල්ලන්ට ගෙවන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. දැන් අපි loan එකක් ගත්තොත් we always have to pay it back to the bank or to the lender with an interest or without an interest. Anyway, we have to definitely pay it back, right? But when it comes to grants, um, like you said just now, they are giving money without any intention of taking it back. කියන්නේ ආයි ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තුවෙන් නෙමෙයි money දෙන්නේ, සල්ලි දෙන්නේ. Okay, so ඒ කියන්නේ grant එකක් කියන්නේ අපි ඒක pay back කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. අපි ඒක ආපහු ඒ කෙනාට pay කරන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. We don't need to repay it. Okay, so that is a huge advantage of grants. We do not have to repay
Is it like
whatever the money we get.
donation?
Yes, Tilani. Yes. It's something like donation, something like a donation. Okay, so you guys might have heard about like research grants as well, right? Research grants කියන්නේ ඔය research work වලට තියෙන grants. Okay, so sometimes when people do their higher studies, masters or PhDs, because for masters and PhD research work, you need a lot of money, right? Because there's a huge amount of lab, I mean, PhD, I'm talking about the masters and PhDs in the science field. Okay, so for the masters and PhDs in the science field, we have a lot of lab work, a huge lot of lab work, which requires a lot of money, right? So, like, it is very difficult to like it's very difficult to spend your own money for masters or PhDs because, right, it is quite impossible actually. For masters, it's okay, but for PhDs, most of the people they can't fund themselves because the amount of money that you need for a PhD, especially for the lab work, is a lot, is huge. Okay, so that is why we have those research grants, scholarships, and all those kind of things for PhD research work. Okay, so yeah, so this is also something like that. Okay, so research grant එකක් කියන්නේ a grant which is given for research work, right? So here we are not talking about uh, research work, we are talking about companies. So here in this case, මෙතන අපි grants කියලා කියන්නේ the grants that are provided for companies. Companies වලට දෙන grants. Okay, so as you said, it's something like a donation. You don't have to repay it. Okay, so you do not, there is no interest and no need to repay. You are getting money for free. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ ආයි repay කරන්න අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ. Grants වලදී. Okay, so that is how grants work. You just receive money. There is no need to repay the person who provided you money. Okay, so grants are given from usually from the government of the country and from philanthropic organizations. Okay, so philanthropic organizations means organizations which are into philanthropic kind of work, which are into charity kind of work. Okay, so yeah, so the governments and philanthropic organizations, there are some philanthropic organizations and there are some people in the government who are willing to help out the smaller businesses. Okay, so there are large companies, and there are some people in the government who are interested to help the smaller businesses. Okay, so how do they provide their help? By giving grants. Okay, so they provide their help to smaller businesses by giving grants and soft loans. Yes, so now you know what is a grant. So what is a soft loan? Okay, so you can see the second point over here. Okay, so soft loans means s- loans. So soft loan is a type of a loan. Uh, so why are they called soft loans? Because these loans have more relaxed payment terms and lower than usual interest rates. Okay, so these loans, these soft loans are more relaxed compared to the normal loans, and they have they also have lower interest rates compared to other normal loans. Okay, so that is the meaning of the word soft loan. හරිද? soft loan එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ අනිත් අර normal loans වලට වඩා relaxed flexible payment options තියෙන interest rate එකත් අනිත් normal loans වලට වඩා අඩු loans වලට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ soft loans කියලා. Okay, so soft loans are more relaxed, more flexible, and they have lower interest rates as well. Okay, so you have lower interest rates means you have to pay only a small amount as the interest. Okay,
Within,
so
I think, ma'am, within easy payment plans, no?
exactly easy payment plans like installments again. Like installments කියනෙත් you can pay little by little, no? Okay, so soft loans වලත් as you said there are easy payment plans. There are easy installments. Okay, so yeah, so that is the meaning of the word soft loan. Okay, so these grants and soft
I,
loans are yes, Janak.
I, I think beginning beginning they are talking with both parties to how they can pay how and they introduce easy payment methods and both parties will agree uh, in beginning, ma'am, I think.
Yes, Janak. Yeah. So that is how it works. Yeah. So these soft loans are provided by the government or by philanthropic organizations, right? So these people, okay, so these soft, as we just mentioned, soft loans are provided by government organizations or other philanthropic organizations, right? So in the initial process, like you said, these organizations, these government organizations or the other philanthropic organizations that provide the soft loans, okay, so these organizations will have a discussion um, with the company, and they will explain how their loan system work, like what is the amount that they can provide as a soft loan, and what is the payment system, like are you paying as installments, or what are the payment schemes available, and what are the interest rates available. Okay, and how their interest rate, I mean, how much low their interest rates are compared to other normal interest rates. එකනේ ඒගොල්ලෝ දෙන interest rates කොයිතරම් අඳුරට අඩුයිද අනිත් normal loans වල interest rates වලට වඩා වගේ ඒ ඔක්කොම details will be discussed in the initial stage with the company. They are providing all these details to the company. So the company can make a decision as to uh, like the company can make a decision to get the loan or to not get the loan. එකනේ loan එක ගන්නවද නැද්ද කියන decision එක company එකට ගන්න තියෙන්නේ after receiving all the information from these organizations. Okay, so yeah, so that is how it works. Okay, so yeah, so now you know what is a grant and what is a soft loan. Okay, and these are provided by government organizations or other philanthropic organizations. Okay, so yeah, so the sums may be small. Okay, sums may be small. The sometimes the amount that you get as a grant or that you get as a soft loan can be small. Okay, so sometimes like you do not receive huge amounts of money. You might not receive huge amounts of money as grants or soft loans. ඒ කියන්නේ grants and soft loans කියලා අපිට ලොකු money ලොකු සල්ලි ප්‍රමාණයක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. The amount that you receive might be small, but it can definitely make a big difference. Okay, so because like you can invest this money into your working capital. Okay, so working capital we discussed about working capital last week. So working capital means whatever the money that you need, whatever the amount of money that you need to perform day-to-day activities of the company. The company ke day-to-day activities කරගන්න අවශ්‍ය සල්ලි ප්‍රමාණයට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ working capital කියලා. We discussed it last week. Okay, so working capital is basically the amount of money that you need to run day-to-day activities of the company. Okay, so whatever the amount that you get from these organizations, or whatever the amount that you get as grants or soft loans, you can invest that money into your working capital. You can use that money to improve your company, to improve your performance. Right? So the amount that you get might be small, but it can definitely make a big difference. Okay, so yeah, so there are different types of grants available, and the availability of these grants actually vary throughout the year. Okay, because some grants are provided only during a specific period of time. Okay, so for example, hitanako there is a certain grant provided within the months of January to May. Okay, so which means after May, after the 5th month of the year, after May, the grant will not be available for you. Okay, and there can be, for example, there can be another grant which is provided from September to December. Okay, so that means from January to September, that grant is not available. Okay, so likewise, several grants, like different types of grants are provided during different periods of the year, during different time periods of the year. Okay, and there can be grants which are available throughout the year as well. Okay, so what I wanted to mention is the availability of grants vary, uh, can vary throughout the year. The availability of the grants can change throughout the year. Okay, so to apply for a grant, or to know what are the grants that are currently available, internet is the Googling is the best option. Okay, so like you can search on internet and get more information about grants. You can find out what are the grants available currently, and if there are any soft loans available, what are their interest rates, and what is the deadline to apply for the grant. Okay, so likewise, all these information can be found on internet. We just have to Google it yourself. Okay, so yeah, so that is how grants and soft loans work. Okay, so grants and soft loans are also considered as external sources of funds, external long-term sources of funds. Okay, so yeah, so guys, we just finished talking about 4 types of long-term external sources. Okay, so share capital, loan capital, venture capitalists, grants. Okay, so these are the 4 external sources of funds, 4 external long-term sources of funds that we discussed. Okay, so now we are going to discuss about external sources of funds short term. So previously we discussed about external sources of funds long term, and we discussed about 4 sources. Okay, so here from this point onwards, we are going to talk about external sources of funds short term. Okay, so there are four uh, there are several types of short term funds, but here we are going to talk about four types of short term external sources. Okay, so what are the four types that we are going to talk about? Bank overdraft, trade credit, factoring, and leasing. Okay, so yeah, so this is the first source that we are going to talk about, bank overdraft. Okay, so the first short-term external source we are going to talk about is bank overdraft. Okay, so yeah, so guys, just give me 1 minute. So until I come back, you can read the content in the slide and get some idea about bank overdraft. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute. Yeah, so we can start discussing about the bank overdraft. You guys can hear me again, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, so yeah, bank overdraft. Okay, so this is an external source, but a short-term external source. Okay, so now we are going to talk about all these four sources that we are going to talk about are short-term external sources. Okay, so the first topic, the first external short-term source that we are going to talk about is bank overdraft. Okay, so what is a bank overdraft? Okay, so basically, in simple terms, a bank overdraft means a short-term amount of money provided by a bank. Okay, so bank overdraft means an amount of money provided by a bank on a short-term basis. Okay, so these short-term monies that you receive from banks are called overdrafts. Okay, so a bank overdraft is basically a short-term amount of money that you receive from a bank. Okay, so this money should be spent on short-term goals. Okay, so when you receive money from a bank, you spend that money to achieve the organizational goals or the organizational objectives, right? So, bank overdraft, as we just discussed, overdraft is a short-term amount of money, like it is an amount of money provided on a short-term basis. Okay, so since this is provided on a short-term basis, you should spend this money to fulfill your short-term needs. Okay, so this money should be used for short-term funding needs. Okay, so this bank overdraft should be used for short-term financial needs. Okay, so what are short-term financial needs? Okay, so when a business is waiting for the customers to pay, okay, so short-term funding needs, such as when a business is waiting for the customers to pay and when it needs to pay suppliers upfront, or when staff have to be paid. Okay, so these are the situations in which you can um, use the bank overdraft. Okay, so you can use your bank overdraft for your short-term financial needs, such as when you are waiting for your customers to pay, and when you need to pay your suppliers, and when you need to pay your staff, when you need to pay the salaries to your staff. Okay, so in these situations, you can use the bank overdraft. Okay, so this is a little bit of an overview about the bank overdraft. Okay, and the next external source that we are going to talk about is trade credit. Okay, so trade credit is another external short-term source. Okay, so trade credit is when a business gains extended time to pay its suppliers, perhaps 30 or 60 days after the delivery of the supplier's goods. Okay, so trade credit is when a company or when a business gets more time to pay its suppliers. So trade credit means when a business gets an extended time or more time to pay its suppliers. Okay, so this can be 30 days or this can be 30 days after the delivery of supplier's goods, or it can be 60 days after the delivery of the supplier's goods. Okay, so basically you are you are you are paying your supplier 30 days after buying the goods or 60 days after buying the goods. Okay, so එකනේ supplier ගෙන් බඩු අරගෙන 30 days හරි 60 days වලට හරි පස්සේ තමයි payment එක settle කරන්නේ. Okay, so that is how the trade credit works. Okay, so trade credit is basically when you get an extended period of time to pay your suppliers. Okay, so for example, you might be paying 30 days after receiving the goods. Okay, so for another example, you may be paying 60 days after receiving the goods. Okay, so likewise, that is how the trade credit works. Okay, so this means you can use your suppliers as a source of finance. Okay, like because when you are getting an extended time to pay your suppliers, that means like you do not have to pay immediately, right? You do not have to spend your money immediately. So the money will be retained in the company, in the business. So in that case, um suppliers can be considered as a source of finance in that case, because since our suppliers are giving us more money, since our suppliers are giving us more time to pay the money, you don't have to pay it immediately. So whatever the money will be retained in the company. Since we are paying it later, the money will be retained. Okay, so in such case, we can see suppliers as a source of finance. Okay, so trade credit is basically, so this is how trade credit works. Okay, so trade credit is when you get extended period of time to pay your suppliers. For example, maybe 30 or 60 days after the delivery of supplier goods. Okay, so that means you are paying the supplier after 30 or 60 days. 30 or 60 days after receiving the supplier's goods. Okay, so that is
I think uh, mostly uh, insurance companies, their premium collect after issuing debit note after 2 months or 6 days. So yeah, 2 months.
okay.
I
Uh,
think
what
they are also
company?
trading. Insurance companies.
Insurance companies, yeah. Yes,
Insurance,
so
yeah. They,
yes. So in
first they
Janaka,
issue
but
their debit note and
yeah, you said after how many months? 2 or 3, neither.
after six after yeah after 60 days they have
60.
given credit period
Yes.
to
Okay.
us.
All right. Yeah. So then that is also an example of trade credit. Okay, so
And also credit card, ma'am.
credit card. Yeah. So credit card tilane, credit card means we are like in credit cards, we are not yes, of course, we are getting more time to pay, but in that case, we are not paying the suppliers, we are paying the company, right? I mean, credit card එකෙන් අපිට yes, we have an extended time period to pay for whatever we buy, but අපි දැන් credit card payment එක කියලා අපි settle කරන payment එකෙන් ඒක යන්නේ company එකටනේ. හරිද? මෙතන අපි trade credit වල කතා කරන්නේ company එකෙන් company එකේ suppliers ලට pay කරන money ගැන. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ company එකේ services හරි products හරි හදන්න ඒගොල්ලන්ට suppliers ඕනේනේ for the raw materials they need suppliers, right? And suppliers ලගෙන් raw materials මොනවා හරි බඩු ගත්තාම company needs to pay their suppliers for whatever the raw materials or whatever the goods that they received from the supplier. right? එකෙන් සප්ලයි එකෙන් ගන්න බඩු වලට සප්ලයර්ට ගෙවන්න ඕනේ කම්පැනි එක. හරිද? එතකොට මේ කම්පැනි එකට මේ extended time period එකක් ලැබෙනවා සප්ලයර්ට payment එක settle කරන්න. ඒ වගේ කේස් එකකට ඒ වගේ සිනාරියෝ එකකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ trade credit කියලා. හරිද? ඔයා කියපු credit cards වලත් yes, credit cards වලත් we get an extended time period to pay, but ඒක අර customer company එකට pay කරන එකක් නේ කියන්නේ. when we
on that
settle a
on
credit
that
card
time
payment
mostly,
ඒක යන්නේ company එකට. ඒ කියන්නේ company එකෙන් supplierට නෙමෙයිනේ යන්නේ.
I
Okay, so
think that on
yeah.
that time there was a trade credit in opposite side, man.
Um yes, but ඒක අපිට trade credit එකක් විදිහට ගන්න බැහැ ජනක, because trade credit is always something settled by the company for their suppliers. Again, trade credit එකක් කියන්නේ it's always a relationship between the company and the supplier. Okay, so our credit card scenario we can take it, I mean, like we can see it as something similar to the trade credit, but we can't consider it as trade credit because trade credit is always a relationship between the company and its suppliers. company එකකුයි යාළගේ suppliers අතරයි තියෙන relationship එකකට තමයි අපි trade credit එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ. හරිද? customer and company relationships අපිට trade credits විදිහට ගන්න බෑ. Okay, so credit card scenario, we cannot take it as an example for a trade credit because it is a relationship between the company and the customers, not between the company and the suppliers. Okay, so we can't take it. Yes, I mean, it looks similar to trade credit, but we can't consider it as a trade credit. Okay, because again, a customer and company relationship එකක්නේ, company and supplier relationship එකක් නෙමෙයිනේ. ඒ හින්දා we can't take it as a trade credit. Okay, but thank you so much for asking those questions, guys. Those are like really valid questions, and I hope it's clear. Tilani, is it clear to you? Like, did you understand the
Yes, yes,
difference?
ma'am, it is clear.
All
Yes, it
right.
is clear, ma'am, very clear.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for mentioning it, Tilani, because like it's a very good point. It's good that we discussed the difference. Okay, so yeah, trade credit, and yeah, so since we are done with trade credit, we will move on to the next short-term external source, factoring. Okay, so factoring is something done by third-party agencies. Okay, so guys, here do not get confused. Within brackets, ST means short term. Okay, so do not get like confused with this word that I've mentioned in the brackets. ST means short term. Okay, so yeah, so this is the next short term external source that we are going to talk about. Factoring. Okay, so factoring is factoring is a process done by third party agencies. Okay, so when do you need third party agencies? Like what are the situations in which we need third party agencies? Okay, so especially if your working capital is tight or when your business is struggling to get paid by the customers, you might consider using a third party agency to help. Okay, so these are the situations in which you need third party agencies help. Okay, so when you have a tight working capital and when your business is struggling financially, then you need some help and you can receive this help from a third party agency. Okay, so there are agents called factor agents. Okay, so these factor agents, okay, so there are some like agents called factor agents, a group of agents called factor agents, and these factor agents will buy the current unpaid invoices of the business. Okay, so what they do is, so like I told you that when a business is struggling, you can reach out for a you can reach out to a third party agency for help, right? So now how do they help? Like third party agency එකකට reach out කරාට පස්සේ ඒ agency එකෙන් කොහොමද company එකට help කරන්නේ? Like how does the agency help the company? Okay, so this is how they help. Okay, so what do they do? The factor agents, the factor agents will buy the current unpaid invoices of the company. Okay, so the factor agent will buy. So factor agent is the factor agent is also a company. right? So factor agent කියලා කියන්නේත් factor agent කියලා කියන්නේත් company එකක්. Okay, so a factor agent is another company. එකත් එක්තරා විදිහක company එකක්. So what do? They buy the current unpaid invoices of the business at a certain discount. Okay, so they buy the current unpaid invoices at a certain discount, and then so when you are buying an invoice, you are basically like when you are buying forget about the invoices for a while. When you are buying something, you need to spend money, right? You need to pay money. For example, if you need to buy a laptop, you need to pay the money and buy it, right? So buying means you are paying money. Okay, so similarly, factor agent will buy the current unpaid invoices of the business and pay the cash immediately to the business. කියන්නේ invoices, unpaid invoices මිලට අරගෙන ඒ සල්ලි ඒ මුදල් ඒ මිලට ගන්න you need to spend some amount of money in it. That they pay that money immediately to the business. Okay, so to buy the unpaid invoices, you need to spend some amount of money, right? So the factor agent will pay that money immediately to the business and buy the current unpaid invoices. Okay, so this is how the business will receive money from their factor agents. Okay, so the factor agents will buy the current unpaid invoices, and whatever the amount that they need to pay for these invoices will be paid immediately to the business. Okay, so the business will receive money immediately from their factor agents. Okay, so this is how the business will get help from their factor agents. Okay, so if you have any financial struggles, and if you have a tight working capital, you can use this money. You can use this money that you get from factor agents to solve these issues. Okay, so for example, if you have a tight budget, if you have a tight working capital, or else if you are going through a financial struggle, you can sell your invoices to a factor agent, get money from them, and use that money to solve your financial struggles. Okay, so this is how factoring works. Okay, so and factoring is done by third-party agencies. Okay, and the next source we are going to talk about is very easy. I'm sure you guys already know about this topic, leasing. Because we all know how leasing works and what is leasing, right? So leasing is also an external source of fund, but a short-term fund. Okay, so once again, do not get confused with this ST. ST means short-term. Okay, so yeah, so leasing is also a source of finance. Okay, so yeah, so for example, when you are buying assets, or like when you are buying assets like new machines or new vehicles, you can go for leasing. You can choose leasing as a source of finance. Okay, so especially people, businesses, companies පොඩක් පැත්තකින් තියමුකෝ, especially like if you look at people's, like if we take people's personal life, for an example, usually people go for leasing option when they are buying vehicles, right? ගොඩක් වෙලාවට, right, ගොඩක් වෙලාවට නෙමෙයි, like there are certain times in which people prefer the option of leasing when they are buying vehicles. Okay, so the same thing applies for a business as well. So like even for businesses, we need vehicles, right? And we might need new machines. Okay, so when you are buying these kind of assets like new machines or new vehicles, if you prefer leasing, you can go for that option. You can go for leasing as a source of your finance. Okay, so many airlines purchase their aircrafts. Okay, so leasing can be commonly seen in many airline services. Okay, because because that is how they purchase their aircrafts. Okay, so that is leasing can be commonly seen in the airline industry because many airlines purchase their aircrafts through leasing. Okay, and in United States, there is a company called GE, like which is shortly called as GE. It is a large US finance company, which is one of the largest leasing businesses in the world. Okay, and leasing can be arranged with your own bank as well. Okay, so when you are when you are starting a business or when you are starting a company, you have your own bank, right? You have your own bank. That is the bank that you are dealing with for all your financial needs, for all your financial matters, right? So අපි මොකක් හරි company එකක් business එකක් පටන් ගද්දී අර ඒ business එකේ business එකේ ඒ business එකටම ඒ company එකටම කියලා තියෙන bank එකක් තියෙනවනේ. Each and every business or each and every company has their own bank that they use for their financial matters, right? So leasing can be arranged with your own bank. Okay, so you can contact your own bank to see what are the leasing options available with them. Okay, so leasing is something that you can arrange with your own bank. Okay, so yeah, so this is a little bit of an overview about leasing. Okay, so guys, yeah, so that's the end of the lecture note 9. Okay, so in this lecture, we talked about sources of funds, internal and external. Okay, so and when it comes to external sources, we broke external sources again into two groups as long-term sources and short-term sources. And we talked about 4 long-term sources and 4 short-term sources. Okay, yeah, so that's all for this lecture, guys. Do you all have any questions from this lecture? Is there anything that you guys didn't understand from this lecture? Or else is everything clear?
Everything clear, ma'am.
All right. So can I hear from others as well? Yes, guys, can. Okay, all right. Okay, can I hear from, like, since I heard from only 2 people, how many people do we have in the meeting? Around 10,
Clear,
right?
ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, so guys, yeah, so since most of you guys responded saying clear, we can end this lecture now and we can move on to today's lecture note. Okay, all right. Thank you guys for responding. Okay, so this lecture has already been uploaded to class notebook. Okay, and it's already there in the WhatsApp group as well. Okay, so yeah, so since you guys do not have any questions from this lecture, and since we finished it off, um, we can close this and we can move on to our next lecture, next lecture note, the lecture note for today. Okay, so let me share my, yeah, let me share today's lecture note. Yeah, so guys, this is the lecture note for today. So yeah, so can you guys see my slides?
Yes, ma'am, we can see your slides.
Okay, all right. Okay, so guys, yeah, so this is the lecture note for today. Okay, so and these are the contents that we are going to talk about in today's lecture. Okay, so today's lecture is not anything Like it's very simple, guys. It's not difficult to understand. We are going to talk about some very basic stuff. Okay, so we will talk about principles of costing and business control systems, and what are the information needed to manage financial resources, the regulatory requirements for managing financial resources, and analysis of the systems used to manage finances in health and social care. Okay, so this last subtopic. Okay, so so these are the topics that we are going to discuss today. So out of these topics, may last subtopic එක තියෙන්නේ, this last subtopic analysis of the systems. So this is a topic which is this is an assignment criteria in your assessment as well. Okay, so this part will be helpful. I mean, all these topics will be helpful to do your assignment, but specifically this part will be uh, much more important for your assignment. Okay, so yeah, so basically these are the topics that we will be discussing today. Okay, so first of all, we can discuss about the principles of costing. Okay, so guys, can you tell me what is the meaning of the word costing? What does costing means? Okay, so we discussed about budgeting in one of our previous lectures, right? So budgeting means the process of preparing a budget. So likewise, what is costing? What do you guys think about costing? What do you think it is? If you don't know, you can guess as well, guys. It's fine.
Expenses, ma'am.
Yes, Tilani, that's a very good answer. Yes, costing is a process where you calculate all your costs. Okay, so costing is the process through which you calculate your overall costs. Okay, so like you said, cost means cost එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ expense එකක්. So like you said, you are basically calculating your expenses. Okay, so yeah. So costing is a process through which you calculate your overall costs. Okay, so this can be uh, yeah. So costing has been defined by like the word costing has been defined by several different people in several different words. Okay, so according to the online business dictionary, costing is a system of computing cost of production or cost of running a business by allocating expenditure into various stages of production or operation of an organization. Okay, so computing cost of production or cost of running a business. Okay, so computing means calculating. Okay, so in costing, what we do is we basically calculate the costs. We basically calculate the cost of production or the cost of running a business. Okay, so you are basically calculating your overall costs. Okay, so that is how costing happens. Okay, so costing means the process through which you calculate your overall costs. Okay, so yeah, so why is costing important? Why do we need to spend time and calculate our costs? Because so here we are talking about companies, about organizations, right? So how costing is important to a company. Okay, because it is one of the tools that managers use to ascertain type of expenses and how much expenses are involved with maintaining the current business model. Okay, so costing is important for a company because through costing, by doing costing, the managers will be able to have an idea about the company's expenses, and they can also have an idea about their current business model. Okay, so if there are any issues, if you spot any issues in your expenses, if you need to do any changes to your expenses, uh, then you might need to change your current business model as well a little bit. Okay, so these kind of needs can be identified through costing. Okay, so this is why costing is important for a company, to have an idea about your expenses, to have an idea about your current business model, and also um, to find out if there are any changes that you should do to your expenses or to your business model. Okay, so these are the reasons why costing is important to a company. Yeah. So like we just discussed, costing can be used to plan changes. Okay, so you can do changes. You need to do costing to plan changes to your expenses or to your business model. Okay, so if you need to do any changes to your expenses or to your business model, those changes can be identified through costing. හරිද? costing කියන එක අවශ්‍යයි ඒ වගේ changes identify කරගන්න. Okay, so like ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි එකක් වෙනස් කරන්න, ඒ කියන්නේ expenses වල හරි business model එකේ හරි මොකක් හරි එකක් වෙනස් කරන්න අවශ්‍යද නැද්ද කියන එක දැනගන්න costing කරන්න ඕනේ. Costing is important for you to identify whether you need to do any changes to your expenses or to your business model. Okay, so this is why costing is important. Okay, so costing is important to all sorts of businesses, and in health and social care setting also costing plays a very important role. Okay, so yeah, because in health and social care sector we have several different types of costs, right? The cost that we need for medicines, and some medicines we need to import them from other countries, and that has a certain amount of cost. And yeah, so basically we have a cost for medicines, and we have a cost for uh, laboratory equipment, and we have a cost for other medical equipments like ICU equipments, for example, right? And yeah, so we have a cost for those kind of machines and equipment. Okay, so the medicines cost, the cost of
Salaries.
medicine. Yes, salaries, very good. The cost of medicines, the cost of lab equipment, the cost of machines, like you said, the cost of salaries, because salaries is also cost. It's something that you should pay from the company's end, right? So the cost of salaries, okay, and yeah, and sometimes like the
Maintenance expenses.
exactly the maintenance expenses, for example, utility bills. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so yes, guys. So these are some examples for several different costs that you have in a health and social care setting. Okay, so costing is extremely important in the health and social care setting as well, to plan, to identify and plan these different types of costs that we just discussed. Okay, so developing an effective costing system is extremely important in the field of health and social care. Okay, so now how can you develop an effective? So I just told you that developing an effective costing system is very important. So how can you develop an effective costing system? Okay, so when you are developing a costing system, there are 6 principles that you need to follow. Okay, so these are the principles that are approved by the NHS costing guidance. Okay, so yeah, so these are the principles which are approved by the NHS. Okay, so when yeah, when you are developing a costing system, you need to develop that costing system according to these 6 principles given by NHS. Okay, so NHS means National Health Service. Okay, so NHS is the short form of National Health Service. So the NHS it is a short form. The long form is National Health Service. Okay, so National Health Service is it's a healthcare system in England. Okay, it is a publicly funded healthcare system in England. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so when we are developing a costing system, we need to follow these 6 principles approved by the NHS. So you can see the principles here. Yes, so principle 1 is stakeholder engagement. Principle 2 is consistency. Principle 3 is data accuracy. Principle 4 is materiality. Principle 5 is casuality and objectivity. Principle 6 is transparency. Okay, so we can discuss a little bit about each and every principle. Okay, so principle 1, stakeholder um, engagement. Okay, so this means, so in the second column, you can see a summary about each and every principle. Okay, so stakeholder engagement means for effective costing, to do costing effectively, you need contribution from all your stakeholders. Okay, so stakeholders. So what is the meaning of the word stakeholders? Okay, so stakeholders means all the people who are associated with the business. Okay, so stakeholders ලා කියලා කියන්නේ business එකක් එක්ක එහෙම නැත්නම් company එකක් එක්ක මොන විදියකින් හරි associate වෙලා ඉන්න ඕනෙම කෙනෙක්ට අපි කියන stakeholder කෙනෙක් කියලා. Okay, so customers and your investors, shareholders and your employees, managers. Okay, so all the people who are all different types of people who are associated with the company or a business are called stakeholders. Okay, so stakeholders means all the people associated with the business or with the company. Okay, so for effective costing, you need contribution from all your stakeholders. Okay, so that is called stakeholder engagement. Okay, and the next principle, the second principle is consistency. Okay, so consistency means the costing should be consistent. Okay, so so for example, a certain company might be doing costing once a month, and another company might be doing once in every 2 months. Okay, and so another company might be doing costing once in 3 months. Okay, so likewise, each and every company has a specific frequency for costing. Okay, so somehow this should be done consistently. Like if you are in this year you are doing only once a year, and in the next year you are doing twice, and in the following year, in the third year, you do not do costing at all. Fourth year, okay, uh, you are doing 4 times a year. එහෙම කරන්න බෑ. So that is why I say it should be consistent. Like it should, costing should be done in a constant frequency. Okay, so if you are choosing once a year, you need to maintain that. Like in every year, you need to do it once a year. And if you are planning to do costing twice a year, in each and every year, you need to do twice a year. You need to stick with that. Okay, so costing should be consistent. It shouldn't be changing. It should not be changing in every year. Instead, you should do it constantly. There should be a constant frequency in which you are doing costing. There should be a constant frequency for costing. Once a year, twice a year, thrice a year. I mean, the company has the freedom to decide it, to decide its frequency, to decide their frequency. But however, the costing should be done consistently. Once you choose your frequency, you need to do it uh, in a consistent manner. Okay, so consistency is important. That is the second principle. And the third principle is data accuracy. Okay, so for costing, you need several sorts of data, several different types of data, right? So this data that you use for costing should be accurate, should be correct, should be reliable, right? Because if you use wrong data or incorrect data to do costing, then your outcomes, then your costing will be unsuccessful, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි costing කරන්න පාවිච්චි කරන data අපි වැරදි ඒවා නම් පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට අන්තිමට එන outcomes. ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ අන්තිමට ඒ estimations උත් සේරම වැරදෙනවනේ if you use incorrect data. Okay, so the data that you use for costing should be 100% accurate, should be reliable. That is the third principle. Okay, you should use accurate data and reliable data. Okay, and principle for materiality. Okay, so materiality means you should focus on material costs and activities. Okay, so uh, there are costs that you need to spend on materials. Okay, so for your business, you need several types of materials, right? So to buy these materials, you need to spend money. Okay, so these are called material costs. Okay, so materiality means you should focus on your material costs and activities. Okay, so materiality means that. And casuality and objectivity is the fifth principle. Okay, so yeah, so casuality and objectivity means you should understand how the resources are used during the patient care pathway. Okay, so you should have a clear understanding about how you are going to use your resources when it comes to patient care. Like to take care of your patients, you need to use resources, right? And you need to understand how these resources will be used in the process of patient care. So this is called casuality and objectivity. Okay, and principle 6, last principle, transparency. Okay, so transparency means the costing process and the outputs of costing should be transparent and should be auditable. You should be able to audit these processes and outputs. Okay, so costing process and the output should be transparent and auditable. Okay, so that is called transparency. Okay, so guys, these are the 6 principles of costing approved by NHS. Okay, so to make costing easier, to make the costing process easier, we can classify cost into 3 different categories. Okay, so again, costing process එක ලේසි කරගන්න අපිට cost අපේ overall cost එක groups 3කට categorize කරන්න පුළුවන්. Just to make the costing easier, we can break our overall cost into 3 different groups as fixed cost, variable cost, and semi-variable cost. Okay, so here we are breaking our overall cost into 3 different groups in order to make the costing easier. Okay, so these are the 3 different groups: fixed cost, variable cost, and semi-variable cost. Okay, so fixed cost is a cost that do not change with time. Okay, so fixed cost එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ it is a type of cost that do not change. For example, rent. Okay, so rent doesn't change frequently. Okay, because like this month it's 10,000 and next month it's 30,000. In the following months it's 50,000. එහෙම වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ rent එකක්. Okay, so rent can be considered as a fixed cost. But guys, rent can change, but not frequently, right? ඒ කියන්නේ like with inflation, maybe yearly rent එකක් අර අවුරුද්දෙන් අවුරුද්ද වගේ වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right, the rent එක කියන එක maybe this year this much, next year it will be slightly increased. That is true. But yearly වෙනස් වෙනවා කියන්නේ අර frequent වෙනසක් නෙමෙයිනේ. Right? I mean frequent changes means when things are changing in every month or in every week. Right? So if something changes yearly, we don't take it as a frequent change. Right? So in that case, rent can be considered as a fixed cost because it doesn't change frequently. It doesn't change with time. Okay, so rent is an example for fixed cost. And variable costs. Okay, so variable costs means the costs that change with time. For example, medicine. The cost of medicines change very frequently. Okay, so medicine is an example for a variable cost. Okay, and semi-variable cost means a cost which changes only up to a certain point. Okay, so semi-variable cost is a mixture of both fixed cost and variable cost. කියන්නේ semi-variable cost කියලා කියන්නේ මේ අපි කලින් කතා කරපු fixed cost and variable cost දෙකේම mixture එකක්. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ semi variable cost එකක් යම් තාක් දුරකට fixed යම් තාක් දුරකට variable. අපිට I mean we can't say 50% fixed 50% variable එහෙම කියන්න බෑ. But it has both the characteristics of fixed costs and variable costs. Okay, so semi-variable cost is a cost which is fixed to a certain point and variable to a certain point. Okay, so it is a mixture of both. Okay, so an example for a semi-variable cost is electricity. Okay, so electricity can be taken as an example for semi-variable cost because guys, when it comes to electricity, there is a base pay for electricity, right? Like that is how the electricity bill works, right? There is a base pay. A base pay we all have to pay, and like if you are exceeding a certain number of units, a exceed කරන දැන් මොකක් හරි like යම්කිසි unit ප්‍රමාණයක් exceed වුණාම ඒ exceed වෙන විදිය අනුව අර base pay එකට තව වියදම add වෙනවා. Okay, so that is how the electricity bill works. There is a base pay, and when you exceed a certain number of units, according to the pattern of exceeding, there will be some more amounts added to your bill. They can exceed when ප්‍රමාණය අනුව some more amounts will be added to your base pay, and that will make your final bill, your final amount to be paid. Okay, so that means your cost or your bill is fixed to a certain point and variable to a certain point, right? It has a mixture of both the characteristics. Okay, so it can be considered as an example for a semi-variable cost. Okay, so these are the three types of costs available. Okay, so now you guys learned about, so up to from here to here, you guys learned about costing, right? So now in this slide, you are going to learn about business control systems. So business control system. So when you look at this word, what can you understand from this? Like what kind of systems are called business control systems? Okay, so if you don't have an idea, guys, you can guess. You can take guesses. No problem.
Conducting business in pathway.
Yes, Janaka. Yes, that's a very good answer.
Using policies and criteria.
Okay, all right. That's a very good answer. Yes. Okay, so business control system is a system which, like you said, it is a system which allows you to conduct a business in a proper way according to policies, principles, and procedures. Okay, so business control system refers to all the policies, principles, and procedures established to enable managers evaluate and monitor performance of organizations' resources. Okay, so basically, business control system is a system which allows you to carry out a business in a proper way. Okay, so this system is made up of policies, principles, and procedures. And the managers can use this business control system to monitor the performance of the business and also to get an idea about the performance of the business and also to get an idea about the resources that you have in the business. Okay, so to get an overall picture about the business, the managers can use this business control system. Okay, so there are several types of business control systems in health and social care sector and in other sectors as well. Okay, so yeah, so to manage financial resources, okay, so we can create business control systems for several purposes. Okay, so to manage financial resources, we can create systems such as financial accounting systems and cost management systems. Okay, so financial accounting systems are the systems that you can use to monitor and evaluate all your financial transactions. Okay, so your income, your expenditure, okay, and the profitability of the company, the financial position of the company, all these information can be handled by this kind of a financial accounting system. Okay, so that is how a financial accounting system works. Okay, and income statements, your balance sheets, everything can be handled through this financial accounting system. Okay, so this financial accounting system is basically to monitor your to handle your financial transactions. Okay, and cost management system. Okay, so cost management system is to monitor and evaluate your costs. Okay, so as the name itself, cost management system is to manage your costs, to monitor and evaluate your costs, the company costs. Okay, so yeah, so this system will also enable the company or the organization to provide their services accurately. Okay, so financial accounting system is for financial transactions and cost management system is to handle the costs, to handle the company costs. Okay, so yeah, so in addition to these two systems, okay, so මේ systems දෙක විතරක්ම නෙමෙයිනේ තියෙන business control systems කියලා. There are several other systems as well. Okay, so in addition to these two systems, we have other systems such as payment systems, procurement systems, and budgeting control systems as well. These are the other types of systems, other types of business control systems that we have in the health and social care organizations. Okay, so in addition to these two, we have these as well in the health and social care organizations. Okay, so now we can see what are the information needed to manage financial resources. Okay, so to manage your financial resources, you need some sort of information. Okay, so we can have a look at this diagram over here. So let me zoom this a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so IFMR. So you can see the word IFMR here. Right, so IFMR. Okay, so IFMR means information needed to manage financial resources. Okay, so IFMR is the short form. Okay, so the long form is the information needed to manage financial resources. Okay, so we can categorize this information into two main groups. So these are the two main groups of information: business cost and income. So the information related to business cost and income. Okay, and the other group is business environment and external influences. Okay, so which means the information related to business environment and external influences. Okay, and as you can see here, you can categorize this. You can categorize this again into two groups. You can categorize business cost and income again into two groups. Okay, so financial accounting information, balance sheets, profit loss, cash flow statements, etc. Okay, so these are the kind of information. Okay, so balance sheets, profit and losses, cash flow statements. Okay, so these are the kind of information that you can refer to get an idea about the business cost and income. Okay, and in addition to this information, um, you can refer this information as well. Okay, so budget, cost and pricing, data, variance analysis. Okay, so these information can also be referred to get an idea about the business cost and income. Okay, and to get an idea about the business environment and external influences, you can refer these kind of information. Okay, so trend analysis, changes in policies, competitive factors, corporate governance. Okay, so these information can be used to get an idea about the business environment and external influences. Okay, so basically these are the types of information that you can use to manage your financial resources. Yes, so now we can discuss about the regulators, the regulatory side of managing financial resources. Okay, so the regulatory requirements for managing financial resources. Okay, so we have several different regulators in the care industry. Okay, so let's look at these. Let's look at some of these regulators. Okay, so here I have listed out some regulators that we have in the care industry. Okay, so we discussed about regulation in one of our previous lectures, right? And we discussed the meaning of the word regulators. Okay, so regulators la kiyanne, they are like supervisors. Regulators are the people who check if we are doing things properly or not. Okay, so there are different agencies or there are different companies that regulate other companies, that checks the regulators are the companies or the agencies that uh, check another company. Okay, so regulators la කියලා කියන්නේ they are companies or they can be government agencies. What they do is they check other companies to see if they are doing things properly or not. ඒගොල්ලෝ හරියට වැඩ කරනවද නැද්ද කියලා බලන එක තමයි regulators ලා කරන්නේ. Okay, so we have several regulators in the care industry as well. So here I have listed out some regulators that we have, a few regulators that we have in the care industry. Okay, so CQC, Care Quality Commission. Okay, so Care Quality Commission is a non-departmental body, a non-departmental public body, which regulates all health and social care services in England. Okay, so they will regulate hospitals, dentists, care homes, and several other health and social care services. Okay, and they are sponsored by the Care Quality Commission. CQC is sponsored by the Department of Health and Social Care. Okay, and Companies House, it's another regulator. Okay, so Companies House, it is an executive agency sponsored by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Okay, so what do? Is they incorporate companies, they regulate certain companies, and they register company information. Okay, so when you register company information, you can make those information available, accessible to the public. Okay, so the public can access those information. Okay, so these are the kind of things done by the company's house. Okay, and HMRC, HM Revenue and Customs. Okay, so it is a non-ministerial arm of the UK government. So which means it is not a ministry, it is a non-ministerial body of the UK government. They are responsible for collecting taxes, settling payments, and administrating regulatory regimes, which includes the national minimum wage. Okay, so these are the kind of roles performed by HMRC, the kind of things done by HMRC. Okay, and monitor. Okay, so monitor is another regulator. Okay, so monitor establishes as a part of NHS improvements. Okay, so guys, here all the regulators that I have mentioned here, CQC, Companies House, HMRC, Monitor, FRC, all these regulators are UK regulators. Okay, so like since this diploma is a UK qualification, I included all the UK regulators. Okay, so because you are supposed to learn about UK regulators, that is why I didn't include any other regulators in any other countries. I included only the regulators in UK care industry. Okay, so all of these regulators are UK regulators. Okay, so what do monitors do? Okay, so monitors are a part of NHS, and uh, they they are responsible for making prices for care services, and for addressing restriction on competition that act against care service users' interests. Okay, so if there is anything that goes against the service users' interests, those kind of situations will also be monitored by these monitors, which are established under NHS, and delivery of services for patients. Um, yeah. Okay, so these are the kind of things, kind of roles handled by monitor. Okay, so monitor is a part of NHS improvements. Okay, so it is a part of NHS. And then we have another regulator, FRC, Financial Reporting Council. Okay, so FRC promotes transparency and integrity in the business. Okay, so they regulate accountants, they regulate auditors. Okay, so yeah, so these are the kind of things done by the FRC. So uh, they are regulating accountants and auditors. So they are checking whether these people they are checking whether the accountants and auditors are doing their job properly or not. Okay, so uh, that is one of the main roles done by FRC. They are regulating accountants and auditors. Okay, because guys, accountants and because look at the name of the regulator, Financial Reporting Council. Okay, so in a company, the people who are dealing with financial information are the accountants and auditors, right? Accountants and auditors are the ones who have access to the financial, the main group of people who have access to financial documents, right? So that is why FRC is regulating them. They are regulating accountants and auditors. Okay, so we just discussed about some regulators in the UK care industry and the kind of roles performed by each of them. Okay, so now we can look at the different systems used to manage finances in health and social care. Okay, so this is a little bit of an analysis of the systems used to manage finances in health and social care. Okay, so here we will discuss about several different systems that can be used to manage finances in health and social care, and we will do a little bit of an analysis. We will like compare these systems with one another, and we will do a little bit of an analysis. Okay, so in health and social care industry, managing financial resources is very, very important. Okay, and because you need to manage you need to manage your financial resources to fulfill your long-term goals and your short-term organizational goals. Okay, so managing financial resources is extremely important in the health and social care industry. Okay, so to manage your financial resources, you can use several types of systems. Okay, and these systems are set by the government, management, and the regulators. Okay, so these systems might be set by the government, or else they can be set by the management, or else they can be set by the regulators. Okay, so to manage your financial resources, you need systems, and these systems are set by government, management, and regulators. Okay, so we set these systems to ensure the efficient and effective running of the organization, to make sure that the organization or the business is run efficiently and effectively. Okay, so yeah, so so in the health and social care industry, there should be a system. So we are talking about several different systems that we can use to manage finances, right? So there should be a system, right? So there should be a system for recording and bookkeeping. Okay, so we should use okay, so we should have a system. Yeah, we should have a system. Yeah, we should have a system. Uh, yeah, we should have a system for recording and bookkeeping, to take record, to make, to note things down, to record and to keep notes. We should have a system. Okay, so I mean, it is very difficult for you to keep a book and write things down manually, right? අපි අර ඉස්සර විදිහට manually පොතක් තියාගෙන manually හැම එකම record කර කර එහෙම කරන්න අමාරුයි. It is not practical, right? It is very difficult. Okay, so instead of a manual system, you can use an information technologies and IT system, a computerized system for this purpose, to keep notes, to record things. Instead of a manual system, we can use a computerized system. Okay, so instead of books, you can use computerized systems. Yes, so you can use these systems to track all your financial activities, such as sales and cost of sales, and payments and accounts, and risk management. Okay, so you can handle all these information through this kind of a computerized system. Okay, so yeah, so there are several IT software available, like Sage, Oracle, SAP, ERP, QuickBooks. Okay, so for project management work, we can use you can use software such as Microsoft Project, Prince2. Okay, and for data management and analysis work, we can use a software like Microsoft Excel. Okay, and we can use Microsoft Access also for data management stuff. Okay, so these are some examples of IT software that you can use for several different purposes. Okay, so so you have to choose the software based on your need. Okay, so if you need to handle project management work, you should use Microsoft Project or Prince2, for example. Okay, so you need to choose the software according to your need. Okay, so I mean data management need එකක් නම් තියෙන්නේ Microsoft project වලින් වැඩක් නැහැනේ. එතකොට choose කරන්න ඕනේ Microsoft Excel or Access. Okay, so that's what I meant. You need to choose the software based on your requirement. Okay, and you can have a system, you can have a computerized system to handle your sources of revenue as well. Okay, so sources of revenue means sources of income. Okay, so you can have um, a computerized system to handle your sources of revenue or your sources of income as well. Okay, so through these systems, you will be able to have a better idea about your income, like what are the methods through which you get an income, what are your income methods, and are there any fluctuations or changes happening in your income? Okay, and is your income higher than your expenses or is it lesser than your expenses? Okay, so likewise, you can have a clear picture about your income or about your revenue if you have a computerized system for your sources of revenue as well. Okay, so if you have a computerized system to handle your sources of revenue, you can get all the income related information from this system. Okay, so and you can use this system to store all the income related information. Okay, and there is another system called fixed assets, fixed asset register. Okay, so this fixed asset register is a type of a system. Okay, so we use fixed asset registers to store to store and handle information related to organizational assets. Okay, so we talked about organizational assets in our last week's class, right? So අපි අර කතා කරන්නේ the sources of funds කතා කරද්දී we discussed about like there is a source of fund called selling of organizational assets. We discussed how an organization can sell their assets to make money. Okay, so we discussed about that topic last week. Okay, when we discussed about the sources of funds, we discussed that selling of assets is considered as a source of income, as a source of finance. Okay, so yeah, so this kind of information can be stored inside. This kind of information can be stored in a fixed asset register. Okay, so fixed asset register is a system in which you can store and handle all the information about your organizational assets. Okay, so what are the assets that your organization has, and if you sold these assets, if you sold any organizational asset to a certain company, then what is the date of purchase? What is the date on which that company purchased your asset? Okay, so date of purchase and the depreciation method. Okay, so the value of, we discussed a lot about depreciation as well last week. So depreciation means the decrease of value with time, right? So your assets experience depreciation, like your assets undergo depreciation. Okay, because the value of the assets decrease with time. Last week එකෙත් කතා කරානේ, for example, I told you buying a machine, right? So if you bought a machine today for 10 lakhs, after 5 years you cannot sell it for 10 lakhs because the machine has now been used for 5 years, so nobody is buying it for 10 lakhs. So you have to sell it for a lesser price, maybe for 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs or 650. Okay, for example. Okay, so this is how depreciation works. Okay, so the depreciation of assets and the years of depreciation, sale of assets. Okay, so all these assets related information can be handled through a system such as a fixed asset register. Okay, so it is a system through which you can handle all the asset related information. Okay, so you can record this information in this fixed asset register and control this information. Okay, and checks and balance should be in place for cash management and segregation of duty in terms of issuing checks and payment run. Okay, so you can have another system to handle your checks and balances. Okay, and for this also we can use a computerized system. Okay, so yeah, so here in these few slides, we discussed about several systems, several different systems that we can use um, to handle our finances, right? To handle finances in health and social care. Okay, so yeah, so somehow financial resources management should be independently examined by internal and external auditors. Okay, so yes, you can use any system as per your preference, but financial resource management should always be examined by internal auditors and external auditors. Okay, so internal auditors means the auditors that you have inside your company, and external auditors means the auditors that you have to hire from the external companies, from the external environment. Okay, so the financial resource management should always be independently examined by internal auditors and external auditors um, to ensure that the financial statements are prepared to give true and fair view of the organization. Okay, so the auditors, I mean, the financial resource management should be examined by auditors to make sure that the companies or the organizations um, to make sure that the companies and organizations give a correct and a genuine overview of their financial statements. ඒ කියන්නේ organization එකකින් company එකකින් හරි විදිහේ genuine financial statement එකක්ද එළියට දෙන්න කියන එක check කරන්න තමයි auditorsලා මේ මේ දේවල් audit කරන්න ඕනේ. Okay, so the financial management should be examined by auditors to make sure that the companies and organizations are giving correct financial statements to the public, to the society. Okay, so like correct and genuine financial statements to the society. Okay, so yeah, so that is the purpose of auditing. Okay, so guys, yeah, so that is the end of this lecture. Okay, so in today's lecture, these are the topics that we discussed. We discussed about costing, we discussed about business control systems, and we discussed about information needed to manage financial resources, and we discussed about regulators. And lastly, we discussed about, we did a little bit of an analysis of the systems used to manage finances in the health and social care sector. Okay, so guys, these are the topics that we discussed. So, okay, so do you all have any questions, guys? Are there um, is there anything that you didn't understand in this lecture, or is everything clear?
No questions, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so can I hear from the others as well? Is everything clear?
Clear, miss.
All right. Okay. All right, guys. So, if everything is clear, I can end the session now. Okay, so yeah, so I will upload this into the class notebook, and you already have this in the WhatsApp group as well. Okay, so yeah, so we can end the lecture now. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay, so there is one more lecture for this resource management subject. Okay, so yeah, so next week's lecture will be your last lecture for this subject for resource management. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week. Have a nice weekend, guys, and have a nice week ahead.
Thank you, ma'am.
No worries, Tilani.
Thank you, ma'am.
No worries, Rifka.
Thank you, Miss.
No worries, Sashini.